the price of post-secondary education is getting higher all the time. And here to tell us more about that, my guest, Laura Southall. So glad to see you again.
So happy to be here.
Well, you're somewhat of an expert on post-secondary. You've got twins who started university this fall.
That's right.
And you've got another one who's coming along in a couple of years as well.
That's right.
All right. So what are some of the tricks here? What can you tell us about this?
Well, it's just having the twins in university this year has made me realize the cost. And the costs have gone up so quickly. So the average tuition, just tuition cost in Ontario is $7,400. But that's for an arts degree. Engineering, $13,000, $16,000, commerce, $15,000. So it's a lot for just the tuition, but then residence, average residence is $9,000 for the 8 months, and then the meal plan averages about $5,000. So you're looking at costs for first year of $25,000 at most of the schools in Canada. Depending on the program, it could be more.
And I remember books are extremely expensive, and the things you have to buy. There's no choice of whether you want to or not. You have to buy them.
So books have changed since you and I went there, because now they're online, a lot of them.
Oh, really?
So they're cheaper, which is really interesting.
That is.
Because I remember, and it's been a very long time now, budgeting $1,000 for books, and it's less than that now because they can buy a lot of the books online. So that part is cheaper, but they all need computers, and then there's other requirements for the courses. So yeah, and then spending money. They still need spending money. So for the twins, I told them to budget $5,000 for the year for spending money. So for $25,000 in fixed costs and then another $5,000 in spending money, you're looking at $30,000 for the year. Now, that does get cheaper, I think, when you go into second year, because generally you get an apartment or a house and then you share costs, and and you're buying groceries, which is cheaper than the meal plan. So I would say $20,000 in fixed costs in second, third, and fourth year, but still it's an awful lot of money.
To get them through 4 years of this.
So I would say you want to have $100,000 to cover the fixed costs for the 4 years. What I realized, I flew out to Halifax to see the twins a couple weekends ago, and we were talking about the costs and how they've been exposed to all these kids who have to pay these amounts, and every family handles it differently. But the reoccurring theme, and what my children thanked me for, and children don't often thank you for much, was that we had started talking about our expectations for them very early. So they said, Mom, you told us back in grade 7 what we were expected to contribute to our post-secondary costs. And they said some of the kids still don't know, and they're in first year. And so they're struggling with that. Or they found out in the summer right before they went that they were responsible for half, and it makes it really hard to plan and budget. So if I was saying anything to anyone, I would say start the conversations early, so that everybody is clear about what the expectations are. And every family handles it differently, right? Some people say, we'll pay the tuition, you pay your living costs, or we'll pay for your fixed costs, you pay for your spending money, or any variation of that. Or maybe we can't afford to help you, so you're on your own. But even if that's the case, say it early. Say it when they're in grade 7, grade 8, and then they can get a part-time job and start saving.
Right, don't wait till the spring of grade 12 and say, oh, and by the way.
No, and it's not fair, but we don't talk enough about money, right? And so parents who can't contribute the whole cost, which I don't also think it's a parent's responsibility to pay the whole cost. It is the child's education, and they should be contributing something. But I think parents who can't contribute the whole cost hesitate to have that conversation because somehow they feel embarrassed or there's some shame around that. But if you have that conversation up front early on, then you're setting up your child for some success because they can plan.
Well, and how did you plan?
Right. So there's lots of strategies, but the RESP, we've talked about the RESP before. So Registered Education Savings Plan, fantastic account.
In a nutshell, what is that?
It's an investment account. You put money in, and the second you put money in, the government puts in a grant of 20% of whatever you put in. So you put $1,000 in that account, the government gives you $200. So each child is allowed to put in $2,500 per year to save for their education. So you can start that for your child, but so can grandparents. But also kids can contribute to that account too.
Part-time jobs,
Part-time jobs,
babysitting
yes,
money,
yes.
mowing grass,
Christmas money. Yeah. It's a fantastic way to save for education. There's also student loans for kids that need it. So the maximum Ontario student loan for a child going to university this year is about $17,000. And there's also grants available from the federal government. So those are accessible, but they're not going to probably cover the whole cost. So kids need to start saving early.
So my understanding was if the parents had a fairly high income, that they couldn't get student loans.
That's correct.
There's something about that. But it doesn't look at what the parents' obligations are. Maybe, they got high income, but they're looking after maybe other people, their grandparents, or supporting them. So it means that, sure, it looks good on paper, but it isn't really there.
That's right.
So I think kids don't know whether their parents have money or not. We don't really stop and think about that, do we?
Because we don't have these conversations. No. That's right. And it's Canadian culture that we don't. There's some sort of, it's not polite to talk about money, but we need to talk about money. And you're right. There's no knowing whether a family can afford to pay based on their income, right?
Right. The only one I remember was my mother saying, money doesn't grow on trees. And that was the extent of our conversation about money when I was growing up.
Right.
But I really, thinking back, I don't know, were they comfortable? Who knows, really?
Yeah.
And I think kids really don't sit down and think about that in comparison to other kids.
Well, and it's hard to tell from the surface what's going on.
It sure is. Now, we live in Kingston, we have Queens, we have St. Lawrence, and so...
I should also say, university is one cost, college is another. The average tuition for college is $3,000. Residence, instead of being $10,000 for university, it's $6,000 for college. Meal plan, average one is $2,000 as opposed to $5,000. So it is significantly cheaper to go to college in Canada, for sure.
But what about the strategy of just saying to your kids, no, not Dalhousie, Queens. You got to go to Queens because then you can live at home.
Yes, of course. And that's an excellent option. I didn't even let my kids apply to Queens, and I went to Queens because I wanted them to have the experience of going to another city. I think that's really valuable, but I know that's not for everybody. So living at home or living with a family member in another city, that's another great strategy for not making this cost quite so much.
But if you get away from the cost, there's another cost in there, and that is your kids are living at home. You say that your twins, they're not roommates with each other, they're roommates with others.
That's right.
For the first time in their lives,
yes,
they have to
share a room
and share a schedule and put up with other people's habits and expect that other people will put up with theirs, and they're not family who are a little more forgiving. And
it's so true. It's such an experience and life lessons too. My daughter's very neat and tidy, and her roommate is not, and she's so frustrated with the whole thing. But my son, his roommate is just as messy as he is, and I warned him when he went. I said, now you're gonna have to be tidy for somebody else. And he said, let's wait till I get there. But they're both complete messy, piggish boys, so it works out just fine. But you're right, they're learning all kinds of life skills going away to school.
Yeah, and they haven't got mom to, make it better.
I know, but it's different. When I went to Queens, I called my parents maybe once a week from a landline. They have those cell phones, and you're at the other end. So they call home a lot more than I ever expected. So I feel like I have a pulse on what's going on, even though they're a 15-hour drive away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is nice. It's nice.
Which it is, and it means they can't just. Well, that's the other expense too. How often do you want to come home?
Yes, I thought that's where you were going.
Oh,
because
yeah, of course.
It's a ton. So we fly them back for Thanksgiving, and it was $500 for the flight. Yeah, that's definitely an extra cost. And in my head, I knew it was there, but I didn't really realize how many times. You know, Thanksgiving, but now they have reading week. They have a fall reading week. They have a February reading week. They come home at Christmas. They're going to come home in the spring. So that's a lot of flights.
It's a lot of flights.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or a lot of driving. One or
Yes,
the
or-
other.
yes.
Right.
And then I flew out to see them. And my daughter's in the choir at Dalhousie, and the performance is December 10th. And so my husband's going to fly out December 10th and see her performance. So it definitely adds up. It definitely adds up.
So the takeaway is start early.
Start early.
Plan early. Be realistic about how much it's going to cost. The price is not going to come down.
No.
It's probably going to keep going up there. It seems
Yeah.
that it does every year. And
It
that's
does.
the takeaway.
And then use the RESP.
And the RESP.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. It's a lot of stuff I hadn't thought about. This is great. Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
All right.